Sunday, President Joe Biden announced in a letter to the nation that he would end his bid for re-election. Biden, 81, has been under mounting pressure for many weeks since his debate with former President Donald Trump. His poor and often unintelligible performance began a torrent of questions and stories relating to his mental fitness and his ability to carry out the responsibilities of his presidency. Biden has been battling a mild COVID-19 infection at his beloved beach house in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, as dozens of federal lawmakers in his own party called for him to step aside. In his letter, which touted his economic and legislative achievements, he sounded his ultimate argument against Trump, claiming that, quote, "We've protected and preserved our democracy." Biden wrote, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." While Biden's letter praised his Vice President Kamala Harris, it did not outright endorse her. However, a tweet sent out minutes after the letter did exactly that. "My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it's been the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." Biden followed up that tweet with a link to his fundraising site. Until the debate, no major Democrats had called into question the president's fitness or ability to serve a second term. Afterwards, a slow but steady avalanche of members of Congress, major donors, and major party figures began to publicly and privately demand his withdrawal. The last time a sitting president eligible for re-election withdrew was President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1968. However, Johnson left the race very early into the primary process. With President Biden having withdrawn, his delegates and potentially Democratic Party superdelegates will have to decide on his replacement.
No, just hold on a second, because I think now we have a statement from, this is the one you've been waiting for, David. Have you got it there?
It certainly is interesting. It'll take a moment, but I'll read it. A statement from the office of Barack and Michelle Obama. "Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Today, we've also been reminded again that he's a patriot of the highest order. 16 years ago, when I began my search for a vice president, I knew about Joe's remarkable career in public service, but what I came to admire even more was his character, his deep empathy and hard-earned resilience, his fundamental decency and belief that everyone counts. Since taking office, President Biden has displayed that character again and again. He helped end the pandemic, created millions of jobs, lowered the cost of prescription drugs, passed the first major piece of gun safety legislation in 30 years, made the biggest investment to address climate change in history, and fought to ensure the rights of working people to organise for fair wages and benefits. Internationally, he restored America's standing in the world, revitalised NATO, and mobilised the world to stand up against Russian aggression in Ukraine. More than that, President Biden pointed us away from the 4 years of chaos, falsehood and division that had characterised Donald Trump's administration. Through his policies and his example, Joe has reminded us of who we are, at best, a country committed at our best, a country committed to old-fashioned values like trust and honesty, kindness and hard work, a country that believes in democracy, rule of law and accountability, a country that insists that everyone, no matter who they are, has a voice and deserves a chance at a better life. This outstanding track record gave President Biden every right to run for re-election and finish the job he started. Joe understands better than anyone the stakes in this election, how everything he's fought for and throughout his life, and everything that the Democratic Party stands for will be at risk if we allow Donald Trump back into the White House and give Republicans control of Congress. I also know Joe has never backed down from a fight. For him to look at the political landscape and decide that he should pass the torch to a new nominee is surely one of the toughest in his life. But I know he wouldn't make this decision unless he believed it was right for America. So a lot on his legacy, but I think this is the key part of the statement. We will be navigating uncharted waters in the days ahead, but I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. I believe that Joe Biden's vision of a generous, prosperous and united America that provides opportunity for everyone will be on full display at the Democratic Convention in August, and I expect that every single one of us are prepared to carry that message of hope and progress forward into November. For now, Michelle and I just want to express our love and gratitude to Joe and Jill for leading us so ably and courageously during these perilous times and for their commitment to the ideals of America.
Right. A very generous statement about Joe Biden, but at the end of the day, Barack Obama did not back Joe Biden to run for the presidency in 2016.
Not yet. We had a similar statement.
No, but he didn't. President Obama didn't back Biden, did he?
I see what you mean, yes.
Going back is what I'm saying.
In 2016, he overlooked Joe
Yes.
Biden, who'd been his vice president, and gave his support to Hillary Clinton
Yes.
instead. And we know the outcome of that. Donald Trump ended up in the White House, and people close to Joe Biden would tell you that he has borne a grudge about that ever since, that he believed he should have been the candidate because Donald Trump could have been beaten, in his opinion then. That's why he was so determined to run again. But he has endorsed Kamala Harris. President Obama at this stage has not. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi at this stage has not.
Right.
So I think there's going to be a lot of question going forward about, is this going to be a coronation, or are they going to have some kind of open
President
process?
Joe Biden announcing in a statement that he is dropping out of the race for the White House. He will not be seeking re-election anymore in November. Moments ago, we also just got a response, a reaction to this news from former President Barack Obama, writing, quote, Joe Biden has been one of America's most consequential presidents, as well as a dear friend and partner to me. Today, we've also been reminded again that he is a patriot of the highest order. In that quick tweet on social media, former President Barack Obama, notably, though, not endorsing Kamala Harris. Harris, though, has been endorsed by President Joe Biden to be the candidate in November. With all of that, I want to go now to Kelly Meyer back at the White House with what we are learning from there. Kelly?
Yeah, and we know, Brooke, that President Biden and Vice President Harris spoke ahead of this announcement, but we're working on all the details on exactly how this came about at this time on Sunday afternoon, where President Biden took to X to share that post saying that he would not seek re-election. As you mentioned, a notable statement there from former President Obama, and essentially, as you said, he didn't endorse Harris there, and he said, quote, I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges. So talking about the uncharted waters that they will be facing within the Democratic Party going forward as we go closer and closer to the Democratic National Convention in August in Chicago. Again, President Biden, this is something that those in Democratic circles were talking about, that this may be something that would happen, some expressing that this day, Sunday, would be the day he would do it, but it seemed to keep getting pushed back with President Biden trying to dig his heels in here. But this is something that obviously he came to his decision. He's self-isolating in his Rehoboth Beach, Delaware home. We don't know when he'll be back here in Washington. He's set to return sometime this week with Netanyahu, a meeting on the schedule for him, as well as remarks in Austin, Texas. We're also watching for VP Harris, what she does. She is in Washington, D.C. today, but no public events on her schedule, Brooke.
Okay, Kelly Meyer with the latest for us at the White House in D.C. Kelly, thanks so much. I want to bring in Democratic Congressman Gabe Amo of Rhode Island. Congressman, you have been campaigning for Biden's re-election. Your reaction to this news that Biden is now dropping off the ticket, and your thoughts on Kamala Harris being endorsed by President Biden?
Well, I share the sentiment of former President Obama when he notes that President Biden has been one of the most consequential presidents in our history. And so today, I'm taking a moment to reflect on that. I had the opportunity to serve as a senior staff member in the White House for the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration, and I saw firsthand the capabilities, the vision, the compassion of President Biden. And today is a day to recognize that work and his 50-plus years of serving our country.
What do you make of Kamala Harris now being endorsed by President Biden? Would you support her as the nominee?
I join with President Biden in endorsing Vice President Harris to succeed him in the White House. She has been a consistent thought partner and executed this agenda for the American people, a historic one, when you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the American Rescue Plan, she has played such a pivotal role. And I can think of no one better to continue this legacy and continue this work for the American people than Vice President Harris. So I endorse her as well.
Congressman, in your conversations with fellow lawmakers, even potentially the Biden campaign, if you can quickly share with us what led to this, what was the breaking point for President Biden?
Well, look, as you and the viewers are well aware of, there's been a conversation over the last few weeks, and I think President Biden has demonstrated the most patriotic attribute that he could show, and that is selflessness. And he, in deciding to step aside, has joined the ranks of people like George Washington, who have realized that it is time to make sure that we can continue the legacy, continue progress, and he has put country over himself. And so rather than note a specific moment, I would say this conversation is one that the president has led and that he will continue being part of, making sure that our country does not see Donald Trump return to the Oval Office and push forward things like Project 2025.
Congressman Gabe Amo, Democrat from Rhode Island. I have to leave it there as we're running out of time, but I appreciate you joining us for the breaking news coverage of all of this.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
Right, let's speak then to Ryan Wiggins, Chief of Staff at the Lincoln Project, who joins us now from Florida. And Ryan, just to be clear, to explain to people, the Lincoln Project made up of people, former Republicans who now oppose Donald Trump. Have I got that right? Yeah, I can't hear Ryan, but I'll battle on. What have you made of Joe Biden's decision? What did you make of it?
This decision. I felt like what he decided to do today was something you don't see politicians do a lot. They put this is a man who once again put country above himself, put it above his own political aspirations, put it above his party. He did what was best for the people, for the American people today. And that shows you what a patriot Joe Biden has been his entire life. He has given his life to service of the people of the United States.
Do you think it was, in the end, inevitable?
I don't think after the debate it was inevitable. I do think that after his own party has come after him in the press so much after the debate and after his two interviews that he did, his national interviews after that, the party could have rallied around him. They unfortunately did not. I mean, what I can tell you is Republicans don't ever air their laundry this publicly. The Democrats did, and they forced this. I mean, I don't think that if he had stayed in after what the press has been like coming from his own party, especially the past week during the RNC, I think it would have been very easy for the Republicans to just say, hey, listen, like his own party doesn't have faith in him. Why should you? And so I think that this was the right call. I know it was a very difficult call. I mean, this is a position that he has been very successful in. He has been very effective in. He inherited probably the worst, administration that anyone could have inherited after COVID and after 4 years of Trump just wreaking havoc on our economy and on our global politics and our local or our internal politics. So, I mean, this is the right move. The country needs to move forward. The country has asked for a younger candidate. This is a younger candidate. The country has asked for diversity and not two old white men. This is not two old white men anymore. I think it's a great move. I think it shows the Democrats and the American people, those small numbers that Frank Luntz was talking about. I think it shows them that there are selfless politicians who are willing to do right by the people of this country. I think it absolutely wins them over.
Right, and what will the view be, do you think, within the Republican Party, within, Donald Trump's cohorts? I mean, how will they be thinking about a switch of candidates, do you think?
Panicking. They're absolutely panicking. They knew how to define Joe Biden. They could play to his age. They could play to, for the past 4 years, they could play to lies that they've been telling, but they spent the past week at a convention running against the wrong candidate. And they are freaking out right now because they know what the Democrats know and what the Lincoln Project knows, frankly, and that is that Kamala Harris is largely undefined right now. She has been a senator, she has been an attorney general, she has been a state attorney, and she's been the vice president, but she's always kind of been in the background. And so now it's her time to shine, and it's now time for her to show off that she is the law and order candidate, if this is the direction that the Democrats end up choosing. But it certainly looks like this is the path that they're going down today. She is the law and order candidate. She has put illegal immigrants in jail. She has put gang members in jail. She has cracked down on crime. And when you're running against a 34-time convicted felon who has also been accused of being a rapist, she is the one you want to come after that. I mean, it is a very, the last night of the convention was so incredibly crazy and so full of toxic masculinity. I think the women of my country are about to come out for Kamala Harris.
What do you make of what Donald Trump has said in response to this decision from President Biden? He says Joe Biden's the worst president in history of the United States by far, never been a president who's done so much damage to our country. And then he says he should never have been there in the first place. He should have stayed in his basement. What do you make of statements like that, which followed Joe Biden's decision and his letter explaining he was stepping aside?
I think he was looking in the mirror when he made that statement. We have not ever had a president as divisive and as awful as Donald Trump is. He never ever should have another place in our politics. We shouldn't be talking about him right now. I think it shows a tremendous lack of class by someone who, like I said, is a convicted felon and a rapist, to talk about a man of dignity who has given his life to public service and to the betterment of this country. It is something that likely makes him feel pretty small, because he does not have the personality or the ego that would allow him to step back for the good of the country. Donald Trump only looks at things as it protects and defends and looks out for Donald Trump. He is completely unavailable to understand the sacrifice that the current president really just made for the country.
I wonder what you thought of the Republican convention in Milwaukee. It is very clear from watching that it is now Donald Trump's party. He is in control of that party. What do you think about that?
I think he's been in control of the party since he came down the golden escalator in 2015. I think that is why the Lincoln Project, a bunch of former Republicans, have come out of our own party to fight this guy. There's nothing American about Donald Trump. There's nothing that represents American values or the values of conservatism. Those are actually right now more reflected. The Reagan Republicans are more reflected in the establishment Democratic Party these days. So yes, I believe he is absolutely in control of the Republican Party right now. I think that is a travesty. I think that what we just saw at the RNC in Milwaukee was a circus. It's a very serious process that when you have Hulk Hogan, who hasn't been relevant since the 90s or in the 80s, and the last time that he was in the news, it was for using the N-word and calling himself a racist. That guy is going to be someone who helps introduce you as the future nominee of the Republican Party. The person who actually came on ahead of him was a Fight Club owner who has been caught beating his own wife. Is this what you want your Republican Party to look like? Is this who you want your leadership surrounding themselves by? It was a very sad day. I would love to say, it was hilarious. And from my side, we looked at this and ha, 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 but we don't. It's democracy, and it's in serious danger right now. Nothing that he is doing as a populist entertainer is good for this country, is good for global politics, or is good, for the voters here.
Did we not, though, get an idea at that convention of how the Republicans are going to take the fight to Kamala Harris, if it is indeed Kamala Harris? A lot of talk about immigration. He said in his statement today on NBC News, talking about the Biden stepping back, he said, talking about Biden's record, he said, well, he was letting in millions and millions of illegal immigrants. isn't that what the Republicans are going to hit Kamala Harris with in terms of the campaign on a subject on which she is seen to be quite vulnerable?
As I said, she used to be a state prosecutor in California. This is a woman who has actually put illegal immigrants behind bars. This is a woman who has actually done things about gang violence in this country. Donald Trump can't say that. This just became the law and order candidate against an actual criminal, a convicted criminal. It changes the entire narrative. And I think that you're going to see a lot of panic on the Republican side right now because they cannot define this woman. If they do, they fall into the same traps of being misogynistic, of being racist. And I think that that doesn't play very well when this year we're calling it the year of the woman. Women are going to make a difference in this election cycle. And when you have a woman at the top of the ballot and a competent, qualified woman who is also given an incredible amount of time to public service, I think that women are going to rally around that. And they're going to have an easier time rallying around a Kamala Harris than a Donald Trump who has said horrible things about women and has been convicted of coming after women with sexual assault. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not worried about how the Republicans try to define Kamala. If I'm Trump, I'm looking very concerned about how she is going to point out all of his faults.
Okay, Ryan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
US President Joe Biden has announced that he will stand down and not run for re-election. Biden ended his re-election campaign on Sunday, July 21st, after fellow Democrats lost faith in his mental acuity and ability to beat Donald Trump, leaving the presidential race in uncharted territory. The 81-year-old had been under mounting pressure to stand down since his halting performance in June's presidential debate against Trump, which heightened concerns over Biden's ability to win the election. A succession of verbal gaffes coupled with Biden's increasingly visible physical frailty served only to intensify doubts among senior Democratic strategists, especially with Trump surging in the polls after the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. In a letter addressed to the people of the United States, Biden wrote, "My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy. And we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me re-elected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America. Biden's decision opens a path for Vice President Kamala Harris and other possible replacement candidates, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, to hastily mount a campaign for the nomination ahead of the Democratic National Convention in mid-August. Newsom praised Biden as a history-making president minutes after he announced he was stepping aside. Responding to Biden's decision, Republican presidential candidate Trump wrote on his social media platform Truth Social, "Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. All those around him, including his doctor and the media, knew that he wasn't capable of being president, and he wasn't. And now, look what he's done to our country, with millions of people coming across our border, totally unchecked and unvetted, many from prisons, mental institutions, and record numbers of terrorists. We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. Make America great again."